All right, everybody. Chandra's going to read a piece out of Access 2. I'll then go to Nikki.
You want to sit here? You can sit here if you'd like. I don't know. I think for the camera's sake,
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Is it okay if she sits here?
Of course.
We love you, Chondra! How's your day, guys? Nothing that exciting happening for us. We're just kind of hanging out and doing stuff. So I am going to be reading out of chapter 10. I'll give you a little bit of context before I bore you for the next 7 minutes. So when we pick up in this chapter, our heroes, Nostrand and Mia, have just accepted a deal with the head of the Liars Club, Candelaria, to transport some really important cargo for him, which they know nothing about, to a Haas facility called the Seed. And they need to gain access to the Seed to find something they're looking for. So we're picking up right in that action. Brace yourselves. The world animated strangely behind Nostrand's eyelids. Crude figures moved and toppled around him in the dim light. Screams and blasts whisked together, moving further away until the space in his vision was blank and soft, and suddenly he was watching his son's birth. The tiny body blue and covered in vernix, silent. Take a breath, just take a breath. But what next? In a flash, a storm of adrenaline forced his eyes open, bringing him back to the Seed. Blood was seeping down his leg and collecting in his boot. He tried to estimate the rate of flow. A Haas guard spoke. "Cease fire. We do not intend to kill you." The 2 bags were still on the floor near Candelaria's lifeless guards. A few feet away was the cargo box, sidelined during the fray. Whatever was in that box had been captured for the Haas. Maybe it was something of use. Maybe it was someone. If so, did that mean they were on the same side? It felt a bit like the incident with the Scholarustia, but that had worked out all right. And what choice did he have anyway? Nostrand ducked through the clash, evading blasts in his direction as he slid toward the dead guards. Still attached to the armor of the closest one was the remote he'd seen on the cotillion. He took a breath and slammed his fist onto the control panel. Immediately, the container started to jerk. A blue flame streamed out through the seams, filling the area with a searing light. The hinges snapped off as the pressure from inside demanded release. Several guards fled the scene terrified. Those who stayed witnessed a vision that would stay with them until their dying day. A female figure with skin the color of sapphire, emerging from the smashed box in a halo of indigo energy, her wings bound by an elaborate restraint. Anguish and fury filled her eyes as the energy coursed down her arm and into the palm of her hand, materializing in the form of a dangerous-looking sword. She reached the weapon behind her, freeing her wings from their shackles. From their alabaster tips, they began to unfurl on either side of her, vast and regal. She glared around at every one of them, an animal freed from confinement, unsure who to trust. They stared back in astonishment. "Get that thing back in the box before one of the heads gets word," shrieked a Haas guard. "And contain the creatures, you useless fools." Nostrand watched as the guards scurried here and there, trying to figure out exactly how to do that. Through the chaos, he locked eyes with the winged being. "Help us," he thought, screaming in his own head, "Help us!" As if she might see something in his eyes that proved he was one of the good guys. A few Haas guards continued firing toward them. Siv and Gob were dripping sweat as they refused to back down, but a larger group of guards charged the being from all sides. Something changed in her expression, and her pupils filled with a blue fire. "I am not a possession to be had," she uttered, growing angrier. "I am a guardian, prize, protector of the keywork." She may well have been speaking another language, as Nostrand hardly understood what was being talked about. A current trailed from her sword as she swung it, and her assailants convulsed where they stood from the electric intensity and whetted blade. She leaped, flipping her body backward and twisting in midair before landing in front of the guards trying to attack her from behind. She smashed through them with a charged forearm, sending a shocked and badly wounded guard gliding across the floor. The tides shifted for a moment, allowing Nia to run with the containment unit toward Xbox 3, who promptly sent an explosive through the door to the loading dock. Smoke poured into the seed, cloaking the anarchy in a gray cloud. Siv and God cautiously backed toward the door, giving Nia cover as she ducked out and onto the bay, blasters still aimed at the Haas guards as she reached full speed. Alarms flooded their senses. Nostrand followed closely, shooting at the few remaining guards, who knew they were no match for whatever this winged creature was. He scooped up the 2 bags, hoisting them over his shoulder. The being studied the team as they fled, disconcerted by the turn of events, and still dazed from her confinement. "The enemy of our enemy is our friend," Nostrand yelled, looking over his shoulder. "Come with us if you want to get out of here." "My name is Nyanasha." "Okay, Nyanasha, I'm Nos, and we gotta go now." She welled up another gust of cerulean energy, knocking off the remaining guards in a storm of power, then turned without hesitation and followed Nostrand and the rest of the crew toward the Rix and Freckle. The loading dock was overrun, but there was no time to waste on anyone who might try to stop them. They bolted through the mayhem, barreling through guards and scavengers in the way, and up the drop ingress into the waiting ship. "You all go to your boy, I'll work on getting us up and out," Siv yelled to Nia, who flew past him, pausing only briefly to set the containment unit on the floor near the flight deck. She dashed past the galley to their quarters, manually overriding the door, fear lunging through her bones and blood as Nostrand trod on her heels. ARC 51 was a mess in the corner, his mechanized guts strung all over the room. But Vaxis was still on the bed, breathing soundly as if it were an ordinary day. Kaneto was tucked beside him, protective. Nia's chin rippled with an impending deluge of tears, while she searched Vax's frail body for scratches or bruises or any sign that he'd been hurt in some way. He appeared to be unharmed, and the relief signaled the tears to storm down her tawny cheeks like a warm rain, held up slightly by the patch on her right eye. She pulled the blanket up over his legs out of habit. Nostrand searched her face as he stepped over 51's fractured parts. "He's okay, Nos," she said, joy in her voice. "Thank the universe, he's okay." Nostrand kneeled beside them, resting his forehead on Vax's rising chest briefly, panic abating. He lifted his head and tenderly touched Nia's chin with the tips of his fingers, noting a cloud of despondency in her face. "That poor window. We almost had it, Nos. Everything we needed. We were just so close."